Hello, this is step 3 in our NDS training sessions, step modules. What we'd like to do is just cover some more basics. In step 3, what we'd like to do is cover some import-export functions, bringing in feeds, and looking at using the XML file format through several of the different laboratories to bring in feed analysis into NDS. And so we would like to just look at that process. And so whether we're using Dairyland, Cumberland, Rock River, any number of labs, and if there is a lab that is not using an XML format that is standard, we can send them the file definitions for that, and they can set up an XML format of your data that you will be able to then import into NDS without having to hand enter that. So in order to do that, what I've done is I've saved some different files that I'm going to import into NDS. And so I've gone to the website and I've downloaded what is called the standard XML, either through the examples I have are through Dairyland and then through Cumberland Valley. So what I would do is I would go to this startup page in NDS, I would go to the import export tab, and I would import a feed analysis. And when I open that feed analysis, it asks me the file type, and it will be an XML. And then I'm prompted to go to the download area, and I will use an XML that was saved as an XML, and I saved it in my downloads. And then from here, it is showing the file. The cloning during import is very important, because what happens is that cloning will allow you to put your data on top of a known template. And so this should always be done when you're importing feed analysis. And I'm going to go ahead and edit my feeds during the import. So now I'm going to proceed. It's going to ask me, I'm going to import the analysis from Cumberland Valley Analytical. Do I want to proceed? Yes, I do. This will not come up on yours, but I'm going to save this as a new feed. It's showing me that I've done it once already. What appears here is that I get a feed here that's showing up my analysis right here. And so this is what I had tested here in this feed. You can see I did crude protein ammonia. This is all the analysis that were run by the Cumberland Valley Analytical Lab. We can see that it's a first cutting. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and put in alfalfa. And here are my alfalfa silages down here, seeing it's a 40 dry matter with a 20 19.7 crude protein and a 46. I'm probably going to choose this 1746 here from the CNCPS feed library. So now I'm taking a known sample and putting this analysis over this. So this is a 19.7, a 17 crude protein. It will take my protein numbers that I've tested. The 46 and the 46 match up, which is more important to me right now. And so as I proceed, then here is my name of the feed, and I would probably put the feed, the farm name, demo, first cutting, back, and I might put a date on there, 2014. Today is 7/01, and I would save that. It's got another feed in there. I think I'm going to stop that. and it'll show my import is complete. So now I can go to my feed library in my feeds, and usually the first one that appears is the Cumberland Valley analytical feed that I tested. I called it demo first cut back. Here's the name. Here's the C Cumberland Valley Analytical Lab number. Here's the date here. I can hover over that and get a quick look at that 19.7 starch that we saw, or 19.7 protein, sorry. 19.7 protein with the 46 ANDF, and that is the import into the feed library now. Then I can bring that feed into a recipe or a ration. Let's import another one. I'm just going to go to feed analysis again. The file type again is going to be an XML file. I'm going to go to my downloads area and let me pick on this alfalfa here. And I'm going to edit that. Cloning, of course, is already clicked automatically. Need to make sure that process is being done every time. So I'm going to import from Dairyland Labs again. Here is the analysis that was run. So again, I've got an alfalfa hay here. Alfalfa appears here right now. I would normally just type that in, making sure that forages are here and not concentrates. And so if I look, I've got a 22.6 with a 33. Pretty hot alfalfa hay. Here is a representative sample being a 25 with a 32. I would rather get closer on the NDF, and the protein will be changed, of course. So when I do this, I can proceed on, and here is that sample. I would go ahead and put this as farm name for me, and probably the test date also, 2014-7/01, and then this will appear in my feed library also. We go over to the feed library, and those feeds are here. The Dairyland icon is here. Cumberland Valley is here. Here is that sample here. So I'm able to change and manipulate that right there. And so here are our two samples right here. They have the date on them and lab analysis numbers. Here they are. Now another feature I want to go over with you real quick here is the ability to do what we call importing and then moving averages. So what I'll do is I'll pick another analysis that I have already saved in here, and for demonstration purposes I may have downloaded this once already, but we'll work with this. So here is a corn silage, and what I want to do is go ahead and import this corn silage. It's a Dairyland Lab corn silage. I'm going to save it as a new feed. So what I want to do is this is a resample from a different dairy, and so what I do instead of choosing a feed to clone off of, which you do the first time you bring a forage sample in, if this is a repeated sample, if this is a herd I go to and every month I get a new corn silage sample, or every 2 weeks, then I would use the resampling function. And so for right now I'm going to go to the resampling function, and I'm going to go down to this demo. This is the farm that I resampled this silage off of, and I will proceed. And then I can choose the silage that I'm resampling. And so what I may do is go and just choose this sample for our example today. And now what I can see is that I've got two very different silages here. And for our example, this is a good process to work through. It probably would not be this different. I've got a 43 dry matter and a 32. The crude protein is 5.8 and 7.2. Starches are 33, 34%, 36.5. So this being the sample that is in the system now under that dairy, the farm being AA demo, the silage that's in here now. And then what I can do is I can choose to allow this to override this and become the new value, or I can click on a moving average, which will give me a 50-50 split. So if I go to the sample numbers, now it's going to do a weighted average of 50% and 50%. So now I'm averaging the two samples together to come up with a averaging rather than one replacing the other. So that would be a simple average. If I did a weighted average on two samples, it would give me 66% of the sample of the second sample, and then the first sample would be 33% of that. So as you see, that would change. Now exponentially, I don't think I can do that without three of them in there. So what we'll do is we'll do a simple average. So we're going to make a 50-50 average of these two silages. And so as I say, proceed with my resampling, now you can see that I've got 32%. This is the silage, but I've retested it once with a moving average of 1. And so for my, again, the way I have been doing things, I'm going to go ahead and put demo in front of this. And I won't worry about the date, but what I want to do is go ahead and save that now. And now that has become, if we go back to feeds and look at the feeds, that has become a new feed in, oh, I have to go search for that. And I would have to go to that farm and find that silage, demo corn silage. Right here is my sample. And that's the demo corn silage, the retest once, moving average once. Okay, now what I'd like to do is continue on. If we go to that farm again in a month and retest that forage again, the same forage, I would come back and I would import another analysis, and I'm going to import the XML analysis. And for the demonstration, I'm not going to use, I'm just going to pick out any corn silage I can come up with. So I'm going to use this corn silage here. And then I will edit during the process. It's a Dairyland Labs analysis. Here is the silage. Now I'm going to go to the resample and go back to that demo dairy and proceed, and then use that same silage, which now the moving average 1 of that corn silage appears here, and here is my new sample. So the average I have in the computer is 35%. The starch on the new sample is 30%. Now I've got here in my data pool, I have 3 samples. So now if I choose 3 samples and do a weighted average, I get 50% of this sample which is the newest sample, 33, and then 16 of the 2 other samples. If I do an exponential, my exponential is right here at 57% on my most current sample, 28%, and then 14.2. So we're doing it, or I can do the simple average of the 3 again, which is equally weighted between the 3. So if I wanted to do that, it was a big pile of silage, you may want to do the simple average as you go along. If it's a small pile or a bag, maybe the most current would give you the most weight. And so I can do a resampling here on a simple or an exponential and then proceed, but I'm doing it over more numbers of samples. So as I proceed, now I'm going to come up with retest 2, so I've retested the sample twice, and my moving average is 1, so I'm simply doing that. And then I can change this definition and save this any which way I want to. So now what we've done is we've shown you how to bring your samples in. Once they're either from any of the labs, getting the standard XML and saving those samples onto your computer, how to import those in to NDS, and then you'll have them as a feed in NDS. Also showed you how to do a resampling. And as we look at feeds in the feed library, when we look at the ability to look at them real quick, there's a thing called a quick data entry, and that allows you, once you're in the program, just to look at a quick schematic of all the analysis of that feed. So you can set one of these up, and most of the newer demos, this comes preloaded, so that as I am working in the program, I can go to a quick data entry area, which we can look at in a little bit, and we can look at the values that are in the program for that. This is customizable. You can change that any which way you want. Add. I have set this one up to look similar to most of the PDFs that are produced by the U.S. labs so that we can see what they look like. So I'm going to close that. And now working with the feed library, importing, exporting feeds, there are some other functions here in the fact that I can go into import, export, and I can export some feed analysis to a colleague by using, I'll set something up on my desktop and say OK, and then I may save it as example feeds for associate. And then what I may do is then go ahead and choose the feeds that I want here. I can go down through the list. I can do a sort. If I wanted to use the farms for, say, a farm that I was working with, I can go ahead and take those feeds in. I can clear this list then. Here are the 3 feeds that I'm choosing to work with there. I may go ahead and bring these samples in also. Bring those in. I might use some from a feed mill. So here is some feed mill feeds. Can also use any grains or concentrates that I would choose to look at here. And so I can custom make my feed list. Proceed with those. I'm going to put 7 feeds into that feed list. and then I've got that done. And then I can just email that to a colleague. They would import the feed analysis as a RUM&N file, since that's a RUM&N file. And I could import that and bring that in right into NDS, putting it in by ID code, of course, and then I can even set that up as a user list if I would want to. So then I can import and export lists back and forth to people that I work with. So that again is we're looking at importing the XML, cloning it against a known template, importing an XML and using the moving average function, whether it's simple or exponential, using that as a method, importing or exporting user list or a bunch of analysis to a colleague can do that also. So with that, I think that's what we wanted to cover in this step number 3, is just bringing in feeds, bringing in recipes. I guess what I could show you again is a little more. Let me just bring up our demo recipe and work with that just a minute or two. And we can look at, when we get a feed in there, what are we looking at, how are we editing it, and working with feeds and feed libraries, pretty basic to the program. So I've just got an example diet here. Here is that corn silage that we had. Let's go ahead and open that feed up and take a look at it. So when you click on the magnifying glass, it opens it up to the nutrient data entry area here. You can see here that here's the name of the feed. It was cloned first off of this feed in CNCPS feed library. It's classified as a silage, corn silage, and it's finely ground. That classification, when you look at this page, here is all the data for that feed. If it's kernel process, I can go ahead and change that here to yes. The classification is talking about it being a silage, corn silage, finely ground, which is 1/2 to 1 centimeter. So I might change that to a medium right there, which will affect the PENDF that's loaded automatically in there. Now, as you look down through here, the Quick Data Entry tab is right here. So we're on Nutrient Data Entry. The Quick Data Entry is here. And this is that tab that we set up. So now I can quickly look down and see that my sample has got a 7.4 crude protein, soluble protein 49, 25.4 ADF, 39.1 NDF, ether extract 3.5, starch 32.3. Here's all the values that I put in. Now, in order to change those, if I want to hand change those, I can change the new value here. So if that became an 8% protein, I would change it here. If the starch became 30, I could change that here. If the dry matter went to 33, I need to change that in the new as fed amount. The new dry matter and the current dry matter should always be 100%, and that's why that's blued off. You can't put a number in there. But in the as fed, if it changed to 30, there's my values. If I want to override this as the same silage, I just do a save. If I want to create a new feed, I would do a save as, but I'm just going to do save. It's going to go ahead and save that as the new feed. So again, if I click on the magnifying glass, it opens up the Nutrient Data Entry tab. Also with this function here, if I hover over that little checkered spot, it's telling me I started with the Dairyland Labs, and I have 3 different laboratories there, and the dates that I modified that. So what I want to show you is we were in that quick data entry tab right here, but the constant calculation page is where a lot of the power of the model is. How things ferment, how things are fermented in the rumen, how things are degraded in the rumen. This is the constant calculation tab. We're in the carbohydrate section right here, and there's our total carbohydrates. There's our NDF, ADF, PENDF, and we can go down long. Now, when we were just looking at the silage and we changed it from a fine to a medium chopped silage, the book value for the fine chopped was 70. The recommendation for the way we've described this as a medium chopped is 78. So if I want to replace that, I can hover over that, grab that by holding down on my left mouse and dragging that over and making that now a 78 PENDF. And as I go down further, you can see that the B3 fraction is filled in from the lab. It's not being used yet in 6.1, but 6.5 will have that function. Come down here, the NFC, the silage acids are automatically added in from the import. My starch at 30. Soluble fiber, if this number is above 3, 3.5, we need to rethink our analysis and try to figure out, especially on a corn silage, why that would be that high. 3.5, we're probably a little high. Wouldn't need to worry too much about it. Looking at this sample, it does look like our lactic is very low. The recommendation on something that would be a 30 dry matter is that the lactic acid would be higher. If I increase that lactic to at least what my acetic is, or maybe 3%, that should come right out of the soluble fiber pool, and then that becomes a more agreeable number as we talk about soluble fiber levels in corn silage. And again, we're getting into a deep area, so let me keep going. As we see right here, this is a yellow box. That's the KD on the carbohydrate B3 fraction. It's in yellow. So as I go along here, I'm in the carbohydrate tab, and if I go into the NDF digestibility, I can see that the program has filled in. I did a 30-hour NDF. It came up with 52. My lag time's here, and here's my calculation on the KD of my B3 fraction, and that's why that box is in yellow. I cannot change this value. If we'd have done a 7-hour starch and brought that in on the import, we would have seen that starch number appear here. But the KD on the starch is listed down here. Now, if we did have a 7-hour starch and maybe that was a 78 starch, and that becomes a 21.6. So if our 7-hour starch number was 78, that becomes a 21.6. If we go back to the carbohydrate page, then we've got a yellow box here. You cannot change these boxes, but for the demonstration purposes, if you and I were talking and we knew that silage was not that, the fiber fraction was not that degradable, and we wanted to change that to a 3.1, what we could do is go to the NDF fraction, reset it back to 0, come into the carbohydrate tab, and change this to a 3.1 right there. So again, we're just playing around with the analysis, the inputs on the 6.1 biology. What's really important is knowing that your feed inputs are done right. and we're going to do animal inputs a little bit later, but making sure the feed inputs are done properly, that you get good analysis, that they're imported through the XML process, speeds the process up. And then again, if you can clone those to make sure that we've got the rates and everything in there, it's really important. So again, I'm just going to do a save. So I'm going to save my new analysis in here. A lot of other features in here. I'm just going to cover the basics here. And so again, what we've been doing is spend a lot of time in quick step 3 here. The startup steps for NDS is to go over importing feeds, cloning them, using the moving average, and then looking at those feeds. And when we're looking at any of those feeds, we can open that up in the magnifying glass, and we can see here's a good sample from a Dairyland Labs. Here's the dairy name. The Dairyland icon is here. If I go into quick data entry, I can see that that was a 22 crude protein with a 28 ADF and a 34.7 NDF. And we can go over to constant calculations. There was neither, this box is not lit up in yellow, so I know that we didn't do an NDF digestibility on it. And I can, if I have a number from the lab, I can manually put that in because the box is not yellow. And I can change any of the data in the quick data entry area here and do a save there. So again, that's what we wanted to accomplish with step 3, and I think we're going to conclude with that. And now we've gone through step 1, step 2, and step 3. Thanks a lot.